That was a well-timed sip.
It really was. It really was.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Well, I realized given the hoopla of the summer and obviously our sabbatical, which we'll talk about today, I actually don't remember the last time that I worked like a full week of capitalism, like truly. So I'm like a little tired this Friday afternoon. And I even haven't even like completed my full week of capitalism, I guess I should say at this point.
Oh, yeah, I feel that. So welcome back, everyone. We will do a full check-in in just a minute, but just to remind folks who are watching, this is Gladiator's Friday Live, just our weekly check-in where we catch up on how we're doing, talk about what's going on in the world. We talk about some work stuff, we talk about life stuff, but really it's just a time to sort of catch up before we close out the week, head into the weekend. Sometimes we have some special beverages. I today am coming to you with 1, 2, 3 beverages, because apparently that's how I roll. So we are also opening this show. It's a pretty special one because we are coming off of a 3-week sabbatical, which if you have any questions about that, we did a whole live stream about that right before we left. You can go to our YouTube channel and check that out. It's also special because Rachel and I are in the same building. I am at Rachel's house. And if she popped her head out and I popped my head out, oh, I can see her hand. So if you hear any echoes or if there's like a weird delay or anything, that's probably the reason. So let's start as we always do with a little check-in. Rachel, heard that you are like feeling being back in the throes of full-time capitalism, late stage capitalism.
Yeah, that part. I mean, also like acknowledge that you can exist in this space and like still have joy and like smiles. I know we are going to dig into a deeper conversation about sabbatical, but one thing that I would like to share in my check-in today about my beverage is that if you know me, you know that I am like a hater of bubbly water. I don't understand it. I don't want to have it. I find it disgusting. And I hosted some visitors over sabbatical who drink different things than I do. So I ordered like a wide variety of things to have available in my home. And I have now discovered that I do, in fact, enjoy limonata, which is San Pellegrino's Italian sparkling drink with Italian fruit juice. It is essentially a sparkling lemonade. It is not lemon flavored water. It is like sweet, like lemonade with bubbles. And it is like very refreshing. So much so that I have had to hide them from my children who think that this is like a juice box for them, because in my existence, I generally drink 3 things: coffee, water, and wine. And with the addition of this beverage, they're like, this must be ours. It couldn't possibly be hers. And now I have to like hide them behind the vegetables in the fridge. Amy, what are you drinking today?
I love sparkling water, and Neil found this sparkling water that he said I would love more than Topo Chico, and I just don't, and I forget the brand because I was like, sorry, but thanks, you tried. I just love Topo Chico, just the regular. It doesn't even have to be lime flavored, but I don't love it when it's sweetened, so I can't get on board with your San Pellegrino. I'm just drinking plain water today.
I'm with you. I do not like a sweetened fizzy water. I'm right now, actually my fizzy water of choice is
Polar
the
Pop,
Polar.
Fascinating. Wait,
Yes.
is that the brand that Amy has dismissed? That's the real.
It's not. It's not. I love that brand.
No, I will say that Topo Chico is the best because it's like there's something about the bubbles.
Yeah.
They're right. Sometimes there are people that talk extensively about fizzy water bubbles and like they talk about the size and the consistency. Yeah. Like they're differentiating between champagne and prosecco and whatnot. And but I will say that Topo Chico, there is something about it that's really good. But this seltzer comes to you straight from my home state of New Jersey, where I spent a fair amount of my sabbatical. More on that in a second. But Amy, we haven't heard like how you're doing other than your beverage.
I think my body's also feeling the weight of the capitalism nonsense because my sciatica is bothering me to the point of like it's radiated down to my knee and my ankle. And like I've been having difficulty walking and I've been hanging out with like a good old heating pad. So that stinks. But other than that, I'm good. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am definitely feeling like the reentry. The reentry is real. I mean, worth it. 100% worth it to have time off and to be able to like just sort of spend time recharging. But yeah, I've just felt like all week I felt a little bit like I'm one step behind. And there's this weird thing that I do to myself. I used to be one of those people who like I would never stop working, right? I believed that productivity was the marker of my value. And took a long time, a lot of therapy, some pretty drastic adjustments in my life, but I've shaken that for the most part. But I do have this thing where when I'm coming off of a break, I feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to catch up. I've got to catch up, right? And so when I feel a little bit like I'm behind by a step, it makes me, it resurfaces some of that old part of me. So that's kind of what I'm wrestling with this week. But luckily, I know that, we have a team that is completely cool with that, right? Like everybody, there's something really special about being in a work environment with colleagues and with clients and partners who, they don't just, they're not just like sort of okay with you coming as your full self. They expect it and they do it themselves. And that's pretty great.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, so we took, the plan this year is to take a 3-week pause. So Gladiator closed for 3 weeks. Our employees and our contractors, had that time to fill their life with, whatever is not their central paid Gladiator work. If I said I was like 100% off for the last 3 weeks, I would be lying because I am a human being and we are living through like an apocalyptic moment that sometimes does require presence and urgency. So Amy and I did have a couple of calls with a couple of clients. I did field a few like, oh my gosh, our funding has changed. Oh my gosh, our board is convening this conversation. I did have oh my gosh, we won a lawsuit and now have a lot of money at our disposal to reimagine this organization. And so for me, I think it was a nice break to actually sort of invest some of my time in my most proximate relationships. So I spent a lot of time with my kids, and I'm like actually feeling really wonderful about the state of those relationships as the summer starts to wind down, and I prepare to send my oldest to high school. I had a lot of good friend time. I celebrated my birthday. I got to see like almost all of my favorite people around my birthday, which was great. And also had a couple moments, Sarah, where I did nothing. And that is very uncomfortable for me. I realize that even if I am like unscheduled, I want to be productive. I need to do something. I need to like check something off the list. And that isn't relaxing or like restorative. And so there were a few times, and also like with the assistance of my partner, to sort of be like, girl, sit your ass down. There's no one that needs you more than you do in this moment. There's nothing you have to produce. And I think about that constant struggle, especially like in this country where we do have this like Puritan work ethic baked into all of these different aspects of our life and existence. So even if it's like not an intentional choice that we make, it's like how we have learned what work looks like. And so I think, especially as I think on like the first and second years that we took sabbatical, like it was very uncomfortable for me. The first couple days that we did it in like 21 and 22, I thought I was going to have a panic attack. Looking at my email was really deciding not to look at my email was like very triggering to me. And so I do think that with repetition comes growth. Yeah. Amy, what about you?
You are saying the things that my husband Neil says as well. And I think I am teaching him, leading by example. His work closed down for a week, and that has like never happened. They shut their whole shop down, and we happened to be off together for a week, and we did nothing together. We had nothing planned, and it was amazing. And he calls it a relax-a-day, like when there's no plans and you're forced to just be with yourself and relax. And so we had a few of those, and we didn't have big things to do around the house. Because usually it's like, oh, you're off, X, Y, Z, go here, there, accomplish this. We had no lists, nothing to accomplish except to be together. And it was fantastic. And I was saying when we got back last week that we were in this sort of like bubble, because I didn't check emails. He didn't check emails, didn't like pay attention to the news or anything going on. And it was hard to get back. It was a rough adjustment. But you know, there we are back in real life. And it was a really, like you said, it strengthened that relationship. We did a painting class together with our friends, one of those sip and paint things. Took some walks, even though the weather was kind of yucky. Just watched some TV shows that didn't, you know, and some goofy movies. Just had a lot of together time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that sabbatical sort of offers for me is like a little bit more space to like create and dream. And I like haven't said this out loud just like to the world yet. So congratulations. I'm going to say it to the two of you. One of the activities I actually have sort of done every summer that Gladiator has existed was to sort of like start to dream about like what I think the work looks like in the upcoming year. And then like, how do I spend the next 6 months sort of building, dismantling, like what are the things I need to do to sort of get to a point where then in the next, you know, calendar year we're there. And there's been a lot of violence in our sector this year, and I use that word intentionally. There has been, you know, the pretty brutal and abrupt decisions around funding. There have been attacks to, you know, private institutional funders that are values-based. There, you know, have been these like allegations of terrorism against organizations who serve, you know, a variety of different marginalized populations. That is violent behavior, in my opinion. And, you know, I've watched institutions across our sector sort of grapple with that in different ways. You have, you know, policy and advocacy folks that are organizing, you know, in the judiciary, and you have other funders who are changing the way that they, you know, are paying out resources. You also have nonprofits who, you know, have been trying to figure out how to maintain, you know, funding. But what I haven't really seen in this moment is a true right sizing. And so I have been playing with, and I don't, you guys, I don't have the right words for this. So we're all, practicing together. But part of my vision for Gladiator across the next few years, in some way, is to be a death doula for organizations. How do we make the responsible decision to sunset organizations that have been perpetually under-resourced or have found themselves in these deep places of scarcity, and think about how we thoughtfully move our people, move our assets, move our resources in a way that strengthens the ecosystem, strengthens the way that we're using our resources towards the cause, but maybe also reduces the amount of individual actors that are in the space. You're hearing this for the first time, sister gladiators. So I'm really curious if my sabbatical reflection resonates with y'all at all.
Well, it kind of raises. I mean, yes, it's the first time I'm hearing you articulate this, sort of in the context of this particular moment. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely pulls from themes that I think we talk a lot about as a team, and we talk a lot about, I certainly have heard you talk about it in the sector, right? When you're talking before, when you've given presentations before funders or convenings of people who work in the nonprofit space. And I think that there's something about going through moments of crisis. And I fully believe that we are at an inflection point as a country, as globally, right? This is not just something that's happening in the United States. But when you're in a crisis, it forces you to really drill down and assess what's most important. And I think that the challenge facing us is that because there has been such a history of the sort of scarcity mindset in our sector, and then when you face these additional layers of pressures, especially then in the context of very real existential threats, whether it's because of, the violence that you're talking about, or the violence that is a little bit quieter, that results in harm and death just the same way, but that communities are grappling with. And then, as institutions, the organizations that are serving those communities, it really requires us to step out of ourselves, step out of our the mindset of what are we doing to keep this organization running? And instead, as you always point out, what are we doing collectively to help the people that it's our mission to help, right? And do it in community with them. And I guess what it raises for me is, that is a difficult thing to grapple with. And I'm curious how you've experienced it when you've worked with organizations that are facing this question of, oh, we're going to have to merge, or we're going to have to sunset, or what does that conversation look like, and how do people react?
Yeah, I mean, I think up until, sort of this moment, those conversations sort of happen in the context of strategy and planning work. So maybe it is an organization that has brought us on for strategy. Perhaps it's an organization that has brought us on for scenario planning or a strategic refresh, right? Whatever that language is. I think it's important for organizations to sort of evaluate not just sort of where they are, but what are the historical realities of where we've been, over the course of the last 5 or 10 years. And to try to be honest with ourselves about what that looks like and what that means. I had actually the opportunity also over the break to listen to a recent episode of the We Are for Good podcast that featured Seth Godin, and he was talking about movements, and he references, a conversation with an organization who is in the health space and trying to do this like really, drastic work to reduce deaths in regards to a particular disease. And they sort of explained to him like what they do. And he's like, okay, great. But is that yielding the results? And they said, no, if we really wanted to change outcomes, we would like do this.
Right.
And so then he's like, okay, well, why aren't you doing that? Oh my gosh, like people would be so mad at us. And he's like, okay, like your mission is not to be liked by everybody. Your mission is to like reduce death due to this particular disease in this space. So like, do the thing. And like, yeah, maybe people aren't going to like you. And maybe there's going to be like a counter movement, but like, are you actually being responsible with the resources entrusted to you if you are taking a very soft approach? And that resonated really deeply with me. And I think that's another lens that I'm going to bring to some of the conversations I'm having right now, because a lot of organizations are trying to figure out, how do we organize the resources and how do we make sure we can do this without having to like fire staff and all these things? And we are in a poly crisis. There's no single organization that's going to solve it.
Yeah.
If we keep using these solo organization linear solutions, we're all going to sunset. And like, then what? Right? We have to rebuild from scratch. And don't get me wrong, I sometimes am in favor of like burning it down and rebuilding, but like, the question I think that we have to start to ask in a really bold and unafraid and unapologetic way is like, who else and what else? And once we sort of understand that, like, where are we able to put our best foot forward with the most impact? And where do we either need to get out of the way, transfer our resources to an organization who is better positioned, merge with an organization that does similar work so that we're no longer competing for funds, and figure out like what parts of our mission or vision are we really excited to advance, and like what parts maybe actually have to let go. And these are like really big questions.
Right.
But if we can't answer them, or if the answers scare us so much that we're unwilling to, document them, that's the answer in and of itself.
Yeah, yes to all of these things. I was thinking, what will work look like not only next week, but next month and beyond. And the truth is, I don't know, because everything is so different. And if you're planning to do things as usual, well, to your point, it hasn't worked up until now. And why would that continue to work into the future? And I had the same conversation with an organization that's starting. They're not starting, they're expanding, looking to expand yesterday. And I have always said that. I love helping organizations that are starting out, are looking to expand, love helping them grow and get all their I's dotted, T's crossed to do that. But one of my main questions is, why? Why do you want to do this? What's your vision? What's your plan? And who else is already doing it? Not for the sake of like, oh, they're our competition, but what can we do in collaboration, and what lessons can we learn, and how can we do this better together? And then if that does answer some questions about, oh, maybe this isn't our space, or maybe this isn't needed now in this way, that's going to make it better for everyone. Not because there's a scarcity of resources, but because just not here, not now, and not me. Get out of our own way. I think, who said get out of our own way? Rachel? Maybe
I might have. Got it.
But I think that we're all just so afraid of failure. We think that if we don't do it, if we don't follow through with our big idea, or if this organization that's existed forever shuts down, we've failed. And that's not true. So I'm excited by all of this. I've helped organizations merge and or sunset. And I think that's part of growth because nothing stays the same. Nothing. I'm not the same person I was before sabbatical or even like last year or starting out in the nonprofit sector. The sector isn't the same.
Yeah. Do you all think that there's an understanding, even a limited understanding among nonprofits about the idea of merging or sunsetting as a natural step in a movement?
Maybe for some, but
yeah, I mean, sorry, Amy is much more generous than I am. Maybe, possibly. You know, I think a couple things, like theoretically about this sector, like for better, for worse, a lot of aspects of it were modeled off of the for-profit sector. And in the for-profit sector, either, you know, just sort of like unfettered expansion or selling, right, is sort of the marker of like true success, right?
Right.
Bigger,
if you're
better,
not growing,
stronger.
Right. If you're not growing, you're dying.
So I think in some ways, like nonprofits have held those same values, and there's sort of been this like very vague language of like, oh yes, like we want to succeed at our mission because like the ultimate goal is like put ourselves out of business. I think that rhetoric is like really dangerous because most organizations only organize enough funding to reduce some amount of harm for the cause that they serve. So they're likely not going to put themselves out of business by solving the problem because they're not solving it. But also, you know, nonprofits aren't likely going to solve the problem predominantly because the reason they exist is because, at least in the US, our government hasn't committed to like the social safety net and like the responsible practices that like a thriving multiracial democracy would need. So the idea that we would like do our work so well that we would not have to exist anymore would mean like a radical shift in like the very highest levels of like power and decision making. And when we are not there right now.
Right.
And so I think for the most part, people, at least that I have spoken to or am in relationship with, have landed in this place of, and I think Gladiator sits here too, is like, we can do what we can where we are with what we have. That can look different. We can like reorient ourselves to reality. We can reimagine what we do with our resources. We can like leverage different strengths. Gladiator has always been an organization, though, that has cultivated partnerships with other individuals and other institutions. And we're like really comfortable in that space. Both of you are contractors. Both of you have taken other projects in other spaces, right? So like that's part of our origin story. That's part of our culture. I think in the sector, we have oriented ourselves around like being a strong organization, having a strong mission, having a strong board. Like our resources have been about strengthening an institution. And despite a number of ways in which folks have called for like collaboration or collective impact amongst nonprofits, bring in philanthropy, bring in like policymakers and government, bring in like for-profits, right? We like have sputtered at the idea that like cross-sector collaboration could happen and that it could actually be, right, the facilitator for like the meaningful change that we seek. And don't get me wrong, like it feels hard. And I will acknowledge that I'm the first person to be like, oh, shit's hard. Like, let's go. All right. Like, what are we doing? And most people, when they see a fire, they run from it. I'm not that girl. And y'all apparently aren't either. So
I mean, look, I will be honest. I'm a middle child. I am like, so I have been raised to be the mediator, and I'm conflict averse. I like to smooth things over. So I'm not the person that runs to the fire. I sometimes start the fire and then I'm like, oh shit, I better. Um, but I'm more, sometimes mediation, you have to sit with the discomfort, and you have to like be okay with people being different places at different moments, and you can't force it, because when you force it, it doesn't solve anything. So I want to just flag that we are definitely, I mean, well, we're over our scheduled time, but we are also over 30 minutes, which is usually where we like to leave these, because I mean, any of us could probably talk with one another for hours. But I don't know whether anybody else wants to listen to us. Though I will say that what this is raising for me is that it strikes me that there's what that really looks like when you're trying to mediate people who work in the same sector, in the same area, focus area, or across different focus areas, what real collaboration can look like and how they got there. We might want to think about that for conversation.
I think Amy and I can certainly source some future guests for those conversations. But I think you're right. Maybe we wind down today. I think looking ahead, we have some really exciting conversations coming up. I believe that we're going to be hosting our colleague Fabra to talk a little bit about what's happening with the St. Louis Racial Equity Summit. I am very excited because we this fall will be having a conversation with Boulay in advance of his book release. And then we'll also be having conversations with Tim Sarantonio of Neon One in advance of the Generosity Exchange Conference in October. So lots of fun things to come, and hopefully like delicious beverages, bubbles or no bubbles. Sarah, what else might we need to share before we send folks into their weekends?
I don't think there's anything else pressing. Just, if anyone is curious about what it's like to go through a sabbatical, and like what that could look like for your organization, drop us a line. Our website is in all of our socials, on the YouTube channel, but it's gladiatorrds.com. And there's an email in there, where a little email form, you can drop us a note, because I think it's actually a small way of being pretty revolutionary. Pretty awesome. I think that's it. We will see folks next week. It's new time. That's 1 p.m. Central. Next time will be better. But until then,
all right.
have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.